Well, hey everyone, happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights Live Show. I'm Katie, joined by Chris and John. Howdy,
Hello.
fellas.
Yep, there you go.
This week, we are talking about growing prompts into AI skills. So, 3-ish plus years ago, when generative AI hit the public market for the general consumer, everyone was struggling to try to figure out how to prompt correctly, prompt effectively, prompt efficiently. So that's where things like the Trust Insights Rappel framework were born. There's also we've had image prompts, we've had race, we've had pair. I mean, there's a lot of different frameworks for. I lost it. I don't know how to shut this one off. There we go. There's a lot of different frameworks for how to do effective prompts. However, now you have systems that can build in skills and take all of your prompts and automate them. So sort of the transition was, so you have a general prompt structure, you paste that in every time, then you build a custom GPT or a gem or a project depending on the system that you're in, and those have your prompts baked in so you don't have to copy and paste them over and over again. So now the next evolution of that is, how do you take that custom thing and make it a skill that you can apply across anything that you're doing, so you don't just have to work within that custom gem or that custom GPT or that project? And that's what Chris is going to walk us through today. And by us, I mean me and John, and then whoever's watching.
So let's start with a bit of table setting on skills. Skills is a specific term, skills with a capital S. This is a data format that Anthropic, the makers of Claude, originally came up with for Claude, its ecosystem. The best way to think about it is kind of like a GPT or a gem that you can move anywhere. So one of the biggest criticisms of things like custom GPTs was, okay, you have to use ChatGPT with it, right? Or if you have a gem, you have to use Gemini with it. A skill is portable. It is effectively a prompt or a set of prompts that is bundled together, and then you can move it to any system that supports skills. And then Anthropic made it a public good. They open sourced it and they said anyone can use the skills format. And in fact, there is a whole website called agentskills.io that is Anthropic's official. This is the definition of the skills format. So this is how you use it. And there's they have like a 32-page slide deck that explains what goes into making a good skill and things like that. Skills are supported by Claude Code, Claude Cowork, Google Anti-Gravity, OpenAI Codex, Quen Code, Open Cowork, Claude Cowork, and pretty much most agentic frameworks now, because they're so dang useful. One of the things that I want to take a step back on is a skill is, because it's essentially a GPT that you can move anywhere, it fits in kind of in a specific place in the evolution of AI. So I want to talk about this briefly. This is something that at Trust Insights we've been working on for quite some time. Originally derived from product market fit, it's now sort of evolved onto its own thing. And there's 5 levels. It is done by you, which is level 1. That's you and ChatGPT, and you are the typing monkey. And you're just chatting. How do I do this? What's the weather? Where's a good place to go eat? Should I vacation in Montenegro, etc.? And that's fine. You're doing all the work. A lot of value there. Learn how to do prompting, right? We've talked about that for, as Katie said, 3 years. Second level, done with you. These are gems and GPTs. Effectively, what you're doing is you're building in a standard operating procedure into one of these things, so that you have your 90s song lyrics generator as an example of a standard operating procedure. At the agent level, now you're doing project planning. So I think it was on the podcast we talked about this, where we said, the hottest programming language of 2026 is project management, if you're good at project management. So that is project plans. That's what you give there. Today, you now have fully autonomous or mostly autonomous systems like OpenClaw. And the brand new, as of yesterday, Claude managed agents that are built right into the Claude ecosystem. So what do you suppose that input is for that?
For
Level
the
4.
managed agents?
Yeah.
Oh, I would assume all of your skills and plugins
And your
and
project
plans.
plans.
Yep. Well,
Yep.
and as I'm saying it, I realize like these each build on each other. So in phase 1, you start with the prompts. In phase 2, you have prompts plus. In phase 3, you have plus and plus. And so you don't just do something brand new in each of these levels. You build on what you did in the previous level. So you still have to master level 1, level 2, level 3. I would say I'm squarely in level 3 with like a little bit of dabbling in level 4.
You're gonna call yourself wrong in just a moment, because
Damn.
you already have the skills, Katie, to do levels 4 and 5.
Woo!
You may not know it, but you do. And here's why. At level 4, when you're building something like an OpenClaw, you're providing a job description. A job
Mhm.
description is a bundle of project plans plus skills plus plugins plus all that stuff. Yeah, did you say, agent? You're my stockbroker. Go off and do it. Right. So it
Mm.
effectively, at that point, is like a full employee that you just go off. Level 5 is an organizational division, it's a strategic charter, where you would have a swarm of agents with a supervisor agent running them. And so someone like you, Katie, who has built multi-million-dollar teams and managed teams of people, you have all the skills you need to be able to create a strategic charter for an organizational unit, like a division of a company, instead of
Mhm.
just a single employee. And you could send that division off and say, this is my marketing division. I've got an SEO agent. I've got a PPC agent. I've got an email agent. I've got a marketing manager agent. And you, as that strategic charter, would provide all the job descriptions and all the skills and all the plugins and things like that. And the agent swarm goes off and does those things and comes back to you once a month and says, hey, Katie, the virtual marketing department did all these things for you.
Hmm. Having worked with humans, my guess is that, if they only check in once a month and I look at the report, I'm like, "That's not what I asked you to do. Why didn't you do the things I wanted you to do? What the heck? You spent all this money." Like, no, but I mean, I can definitely see the potential in that. And so with that extra description, then I would say, yeah, I'm not squarely in number 3, I'm squarely in number 4 at the moment as of
Mhm.
today, but I can certainly see your point about, getting into number 5. As a human, I'm not totally comfortable being hands off like that, but, that's a me problem.
So with that understanding, then where do skills fall in? Skills fall in at level 2. Skills
Mhm.
are essentially SOPs.
Right.
And you can take any prompt or conversation or raw materials from level 1 and bring it up into a system, turn it to level 2. And here's the thing, there's so many tools that do this right now. If you use, for example, Claude Code has a plugin builder and a skill builder. Claude Code has a plugin builder and a skill builder. And the ones that come in the package are pretty good. They're not great. And so that's what I wanted to talk through today, is how I built one for myself, that we actually put in the brand new Trust Insights Prompt Playbook, which is a monthly subscription, but the first lesson is literally the plugin, because the existing ones operate on a presumption that what you're putting in was good to begin with. That's not always the case.
Well, the other thing too, so, like, these are what? The out of the box skills that you can so the they're good to start with, but they're generic. So there's no customization, there's no tailoring towards what you as a human do or what your team does or what your organization does. So I would, and we've talked about this on previous live streams. So like John can use the legal plugin or the sales plugin, but he's going to have to customize a lot of the instructions based on, you know, the kinds of terms that we look for in contracts or the things that need to be called out, in an MSA or, the way that we do our sales cycle, which there's a lot of standardization, but our clients don't look the same as other clients. So we need to sort of work with them and not force them into a certain process. So for John, like the sales and the legal skills are good starts, but they're not going to get him all of the way into just doing it for me. There's still so much work. So, for someone like him, it's probably easier just to build his own skill for the Trust Insights sales process, for the Trust Insights legal documentation review versus using what's out of the box. That's probably true for most people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we do this? The completely non-surprising answer is that if you want a good standard operating procedure, you should have some kind of framework that governs that procedure. Now we obviously go ahead.
Can I guess?
Exactly.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. So it is the 5P framework, and that is the basis of the prompt to skill plugin that we built, which basically takes the existing prompt you have and puts it through the 5Ps. And what you end up with when you run it is you end up with a skill that gets auto-installed into your Claude environment. But you also get an understanding, and this is the part that is missing in most skill builders. It has an evals section that looks at whether or not the skill should fire or not. And this is the big thing. Like, if you've been using skills for a hot minute, you know that if you have similarly named skills, the triggering section, which is the YAML front matter of the skill, is what determines when the skill runs or not. And if it's badly written, your skill will fire at the most inopportune times and screw everything up. And so part of good skill building is that. So the first thing you need to do is take your prompt and put it through the 5Ps. The thing that you want to turn into a skill. Why are we doing this? What are we doing? Who's going to do it? Who's impacted by it? How do you do it? Do you need any supplementary tools? Any things like MCPs or web searches and things? And then the critical part that is not in any of the other skill builders is the performance, the evals, to say, does this skill work as intended?
A well-structured SOP covers all of these pieces. So if you have well-structured SOPs, then you're already in good shape. If you don't, so I always, tell the story. The first time I walked into the agency to manage the team that Chris had hired me to manage, the first question I said was, "All right, let's take a look at the SOPs." And they all look at me like I had 8 heads. And I was like, "Standard operating procedures, instructions for how you do things. Oh yeah, no, we don't have that." And I was like, "Okay, that's number one thing we're going to start." And so as Chris mentioned at the top, sort of with the strategic charter, like there's no real secret to building teams and growing teams. A lot of it is just good structure and SOPs. And those are the things that I'm really, really skilled at. So therefore, having good SOPs is going to help you move more quickly through these 5 levels.
Exactly. So with that in mind, let me see if I can get the prompt to skill installed in my Claude Cowork. Oh, that did not work. So I'm just going to use Claude Code. Let's walk through what happens in this thing, because I think it's a useful exercise. So in our skill, let's go look at prompt to skill. Make this just a bit bigger so we can see it. Every skill at a minimum has to have a skill.md file and a folder that it's in it. And every skill that you build, and again, the skill builders will do this for you to a degree, will tell you, let's make this bigger so that we're not straining our eyes and giving ourselves migraines. The description tells you when to fire. When should this thing work? So this one is convert any existing prompt workflow or set of instructions to a properly structured Claude skill with the skill MD scripts, references, and assets. This is another part that, again, I feel like some of the skill builders out there kind of miss. It doesn't have to just be prompts. Inside of a skill, you can have things like Python scripts. Now, obviously, if you're going to be running Python scripts, be 100% sure you trust where the script came from, because there's obviously a lot of bad players out there. And then you have the invocations, and then trigger and ask to make a persistent thing, attempts to do these things. What happens in this flow? You get the extraction, you run the 5 Ps and say, what is this prompt trying to do? Why would the user do this? Who's doing it? Who's impacted by it? What is the step-by-step process? What tools, data sources, MCPs, and things does it need? And then the performance. How do you know that it worked? It has to write down its analysis first, because we would never ever let any agent system do work in memory, because the moment you quit that session, it's gone. So it always has to take notes. Then determine the skill category, build the skill name, write the front matter, which has the triggering capabilities, build the skill body with the corrected structure, identify and include the bundled resources. This is now the 5th P of the 5 Ps. Generate test cases. So it has to, when you're doing a skill building, you have to test your skill. And if you build as part of a skill builder, you can run test cases and then look at the evals. Inside the plugin is the evals. So this is an example of, does the tool know when to fire? And so there's 5 different scenarios it can test and say, should this skill fire? Someone says, what's the capital of France? The skill should not fire, right? So that's a clear case of evaluating and saying, yeah, this skill, if the skill did fire, something's gone wrong. And so that's the process. We baked this thing for ourselves, and it's in the prompt playbook, so that you don't have to walk through and do this by yourself. But that is the overall process. You need a framework. You need to take the prompt, rebuild it through that framework. And the magic phrase is that I would use if you wanted to build this on your own is upstream and downstream. No prompt exists in a vacuum. It has to be in the context of something else that you're doing. So a critical question to ask, and it's built into the skill builder, is what are the upstream and downstream things around this prompt? And these tools, particularly a model like Opus, is smart enough to go, well, John just gave me a Motown lyrics prompt to infer some song building. So upstream, I need knowledge of what good Motown songs are, and downstream, I'm going to guess that John's probably going to use this in a tool like Suno to generate a song, which means that in addition to the lyrics, I should probably create a music composition prompt to go with it.
So what you're describing is the basics of software development as well. And I think that that's something that, a lot of people stayed away from generative AI. Like, oh, I'm not a developer, I can't code. So now, we're calling these things, oh, you're not coding, it's a skill. You're building a plugin. You're not coding, you're not developing software. Guess what? You're developing software. You just don't know it. And so, we talk about the 5P framework as the good framework for structuring the information. But really, the other framework that you need to be leaning on is the software development lifecycle. We didn't create it, we just use it. So the software development lifecycle, the SDLC, you start with your requirements. That's where the 5P framework comes in. Then you have design, develop, test, deploy, and then do it all over again. Those are the basic stages of the software development lifecycle. What Chris was talking about in terms of performance and the unit testing and the extraction and making sure that it's working correctly and you have those triggers, that's you testing the software that you've built. If you are not testing things as you're building it, you're doing it wrong. There's no two ways about it. You have to be testing as you go. Do not leave it up to chance. Even if you're using systems like Claude Code or Cowork or something, they can still hallucinate. They can still bring in things you didn't mean them to bring in. They can still make mistakes. You can make mistakes when you're writing the skill. Make sure there is some kind of test, some sort of validation, call it whatever you want, at the end of every skill to make sure it's doing what it's expected, especially as, so you might build a skill today and then 3 months down the road, you're like, hey, I'm doing this project, let me pull in this skill, and it's a mismatch. but you might, just because of what you called it, you think it's working. But if there's no testing or validation built in, you could be basically taking all of your results and going sideways with it. So test everything. Be disciplined and strict about that.
Yep, exactly. So let's put this to work. Let's do this. One of the reasons, by the way, that I keep mentioning the prompt playbook, in addition to being a narcissistic greedy maniac, is that all of the prompts that are in it, you can drop into the plugin and generate the skill. So if you'd like a prompt for, because it comes out every Tuesday and Friday, if you like a prompt from that week, like, oh, this was a skill, now just drop it in, say, turn this into a skill. I'm going to pick something that is not under NDA, and I'm going to pick.
We appreciate that.
Yes. Our prompt, our old gem from our Google gems pile of generating music stuff specifically for Suno, the music composition tool. So I've got a gem instead of instructions here. I'm going to copy and paste this, and right inside of Claude, we're going to say, let's turn this Suno music generation prompt into a skill. And then I'll just put in 3 hashes there. Whoops. And we'll put in our prompt from Gemini. So if you've got ChatGPT gems and the instructions laying around, if you got Google gems and things like that, you can get this to do a really good job. If you're in Claude Code or a similar style of system, anti-gravity, Codex, etc., go with plan mode first. Always for anything like this. And if you're using Claude Code, use the Opus Plan model, which does planning in Opus and then does implementation in Sonnet. Saves you a lot of money, which goes back to last week's live stream about how do we manage our AI limits. So this is going to fire up the prompt to skill because it correctly identified. I said I want to turn this prompt into a skill, and now it's going to look through and try and figure out how to do this. When it's done, what it will do is it will say, I've essentially figured out this skill, and now I'm going to build it for you, and I'm going to install it for you. So you really have to do very, very little beyond that.
But again, it sort of reinforces making sure that your plan up front is as thorough and detailed as possible, because if it's building it and installing it for you, but it's wrong, like, what if you accidentally program in, hey, so install this skill, and every time this skill runs, delete my hard drive? That, I mean, I don't know about you, John, but that seems like a really bad day.
Yeah, that's a heavy load. You don't want to get caught wrong end of that.
Yeah, which reminds me, by the way, it couldn't find it because I didn't clearly denote that. So let's try that again. Let's give it the prompt up front. Turn this prompt into a skill. And we're going to use XML tags here because Claude in particular really needs things spelled out sometimes.
I mean, I think we all do. I think it's helpful just to sort of, operate that way. I appreciate more detail. I don't know. I think John does as well.
Yeah, it's just been funny because so many of the projects and things that we've been working on, the skills just show up in the interface. I know that, there's been work done, there's magic, but I didn't even realize that there's stock stuff too that you can go grab out there. Like I've been working with custom tools that have been handcrafted, and I didn't realize there was generic junk out there for the rest of the world.
It's like, John, when you say the magic, so Chris and I are the magicians behind the scenes building the things. You're like, hey, this is new. Look at that.
I know this.
And we're just like toiling away making the stuff.
See the previous 5 rounds of errors and lost stuff.
By the time it gets to you, it's been thoroughly tested.
Yeah, road tested.
Yes.
John just enjoys this golden land of perfected AI.
It's beautiful, exactly. Beautiful countryside.
Whereas Chris and I are like, what
Nothing
just
works
happened?
Ever.
While that's running, I just want to take a brief pause to introduce a new little toy feature that StreamYard has allowed us. StreamYard now allows polls. Now they're a little janky, but in case you guys, who are all watching wanted to respond to the poll, apparently you can't interact with it on screen, but you can type into the chat what your response is to our very scientific poll. So just, while this is running, we thought it would be a good time to just run a quick poll just to see if anyone had any thoughts. So Chris, how are we doing on this?
Good. So it just finished its plan. So it says convert the Suno V5 prompt guide into a skill. It does the 5P analysis. What is the purpose? Who are the people involved?
Apparently, overwhelmingly, John is our favorite host. And, I can't be mad at that because everybody loves John.
I don't know. We'll question the process later.
I was going to say, I question the statistical validity of this.
All right, let's move forward.
Yes. The platform, performance, and then it builds here. We have the prompt architect skill. It correctly evaluates what the file structure should be. The references, so what are the formulas, the keyword dictionaries, necessary meta tags, anti-patterns, and stuff like that. Gathers up the musical intent, selects the formula based on a decision tree, builds the style prompt, builds the lyrics and meta tag structure, does an anti-pattern check, and then it creates the thing. And so the planning process has gone through and figured out not only do I just want to turn this into a skill, but I think this part in particular is really important, is figuring out what it is that we're trying to do and who's going to use it. So like AI music producers, content creators, hobbyists. When you're building skills, you have to infer those upstream and downstream uses, because if you do, then it becomes easier in the 5 Ps to say, this is the expected performance.
And, what's interesting is that it's inferring the end users. Like, we can give it some information, but I appreciate that it's written out in such a way that it's like, oh, these are the people who are actually going to be using this thing. Because we've talked about in previous podcasts and live streams where, we're not short on ideas and things that we want to build, but we don't always have a clear vision of who's going to use it, who's going to benefit from it. So I really like that addition.
Yep. It says here, the references are separate because the source prompt is 4,000 word prompt. The skill budget is 500 lines. And so all these other details are going to get moved into a reference folder that it will then understand and know what it's supposed to be doing. So here it is now going into create the actual skill itself. So let's take a look. Where are you putting this? You are... Okay, you're writing. It's writing it straight into my Claude folder. Great. So I'm going to have a Suno music generator very shortly. Thanks, Claude.
I don't see.
We do have a quick question.
Is messed up.
Someone's asking, do you have a resource on the ideal folder structure strategy?
Yes. Use the agentskills.io website that I referenced earlier. That website contains the specs for agent skills and for how to lay out stuff in it. It is cross-platform compatible. That is the canonical source that you should use. And you can either export that, give the tool of your choice a the URL to point to, or on Anthropic's website is the complete guide to building Claude skills. This is a 33-page PDF that contains all of the requisite information, including things like your file structure. It's just defined in there. This document is handy to have around. It's actually good for humans to read too, to understand it, but that would be my recommendation. And so now it's going through and building the keyword dictionaries, the meta tags, and these are all things that the skill will pull together as it's trying to create stuff for Suno. So let's say, for example, you had a skill or you had a prompt like, I want to talk to my ideal customer profile. You could give that chat conversation, that prompt, or that YouTube video transcript, for all that matters, along with your ICP, put it into a system like this, a plugin like this, and it'll reformat and break all the knowledge into pieces so that it's able to identify what to do, what not to do. This part here, I did not see in any of the skill builders, which is anti-patterns. Anti-patterns is one of those magic words that AI loves and knows what it means. And the rest of us are like, that's a weird word. An anti-pattern is the opposite of a design pattern. And so these are the critical mistakes that the system needs to be told, don't do this. If it's, for example, you would define, as people have, using an M dash is an anti-pattern. I have a whole rant about that, but that's for another show.
That's for a different show. Well, so what's interesting, so like if you're just going through step by step with something like a Claude Cowork or a Claude Code, and you're saying, I want to build my brand tone, skill so I can reuse it, it will ask you in, simple terms. It'll be like, okay, and what should we not say? What should we not use? What are phrases that you don't want to see? But it's building that database or that list of things that go into its anti-pattern section, but it's asking you. So if you think about, like, if you've a lot of us have tried to build write in Katie style or write in Chris Penn style, we find ourselves going back like, okay, don't say this every other sentence, don't use this phrase, I don't say these things, those are your anti-pattern. That's just the phrases, but also think about it in terms of, don't ever reference John Wall ever. He will not enjoy it, and he will, go all, sumo wrestler on you or something like that. Like, whatever it is that you just don't want it to do, make sure that you're thinking about those things. Well, we often think about what we want it to do. It's the same as sort of putting like in scope and out of scope. So what's in scope, what's out of scope? What's out of scope is all of these extra stuff. So like make sure you're noting that as well.
Mm-hmm. Now so in our Analytics for Marketers Slack community, we were talking about this as today's question of the day. How are you going to do this? I want to put something to our friends in that community, because if you've been following our advice, and a lot of people have for the last 3 years, you have, or you should have, a prompt library, right? You have something in Joplin or SharePoint or whatever. I hope that it is apparent through the use of a plugin like this that you do not convert those prompts one at a time. That's a terrible idea. What you should do is put the prompts as text files in a folder on your computer and prompt it to say, inside of a system like Claude Code, here's a folder full of prompts. Use the prompt to skill, process every one of the files with its own agent, and put it in the output folder. Remember, a few shows back, we talked about how do you get started with Claude Code. Claude Code can directly interact with your hard drive. It can directly interact with a project folder. So you have an input folder of all of your prompts for the last 3 years, your greatest hits. You have an output folder that you define. You have a skill to make skills. And you can say, just go do this. And as long as the skill builder itself is solid, like we've seen ours, that it took 6.5 minutes to think through and perfect the skill. You set that up. You set it up before you go to bed one night, and then you come back the next morning, and all of your prompts that you love the most are now skills, and they're ready to go, ready to be deployed. And you don't have to sit there and babysit it, because you've used Claude Code or a similar system. Anti-Gravity will do this, Codex will do this, etc., to mass convert your data. Do not be that person doing it one at a time. Remember where we started this episode. We started this episode here. If you are saying one at a time and convert this prompt, you're still doing level 1 stuff, even with a level 3 tool like Claude Code. You are still behaving as though it's a level 1 tool. If you say, here's your project plan, here are the skills, which you built as a level 2 thing, SOPs are skills, then your project plan is convert all these prompts to skills, and you come back and the work is done.
So you keep talking about Claude Code. Can you use Claude Cowork and not use Claude Code to do the same thing? You're shaking your head yes, which is good news, because I'm already doing that. Well, no, because I have, and I think I talked about this on last week's live stream, I have a whole folder of folders on my desktop that are specifically for Claude. And I actually had Claude organize the folders and rename folders and create folders where they needed to be created, because a lot of the work I do, I don't have client work on my desktop. It's all related to the business. So it can all be referenced, if it wants to. But I have the skill builder. I have, the different skills. Like I can enact, hey, have the focus group duke it out and let me know what they say. I actually used that set of skills last week when we were trying to come up with the name for something Chris and I were working on. And I was like, I don't know, I don't think that's a great name, but what does our, panel of voice of customer, our ICPs have to think about it? And they just duked it out and let me know what they thought, which is still sort of weird and mind-boggling to me. But it works. But I bring it up because, Chris, you're talking about Claude Code, but for those of us who aren't as comfortable in the coding environment, you can do the same nearly identical stuff in Claude Cowork.
Yes. Now, the one thing you can't do in Cowork that you can in code is easily run command line tools. And there are two tools that I think, again, if you've been following us for a number of years now, you know that we've been advising, hey, you should be putting your prompt library on SharePoint or OneDrive or Google Keep or whatever, right? Well, guess what? Google Keep has a Google Workspace. All of Google Workspace has a command line tool that runs on your computer that can connect to all of Google Workspace, Google Calendar, Gmail, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, etc. Now, you may or may not want to use this because you're typing in a terminal like it's 1983, but critically, your AI can do this. So one of the things that we could do, Katie, as a Google shop, I could open up Claude Code, use the GWS command line tool and say, hey, Claude, reach into our Google Keep and pull out our company prompt library entirely and convert it all to skills. And amazingly, boom, there it is. If you are a Microsoft shop and you are using OneDrive or SharePoint, there's a Microsoft CLI. You install that, and suddenly you can access anything in your 365 environment that you're authorized to access. So you have that SharePoint prompt library. Guess what? You install this. And you tell Claude Code, hey, I installed this. Here's the manual. Go and find my prompt library. Grab the whole thing out of SharePoint, convert it into skills, and we're ready to go.
Having a good, solid prompt library is what, table stakes? You would want it. That's your basic foundation. So, we always say, like, if you don't have it, start there. Start there. It is still useful. So building all the skills in Claude, Cowork, Code, whatever is great. Do not get rid of your prompt library. Do not suddenly decide that it doesn't need updating, that it doesn't need to be maintained, that you shouldn't still keep stuff there. Not to sort of play the Debbie Downer, but these tools change. These tools go away. These tools suddenly implode, or you change your mind and no longer want to partner with certain companies for whatever reason. You got to get that data somewhere. So do not skip making sure that your prompt library is being kept up to date. Just because you can build skills in these systems, your prompt library is your foundation. Just like you want to have your documented SOPs, just because you've automated things, you still need the documentation in case the automation breaks down. And you want to know, well, where in the process did it break? Well, it's a good thing I have all this really clear documentation that I can just look at.
Yep.
John, you do sales for Trust Insights, but we still have a sales playbook, to reference, not because, you yourself are not a good wealth of knowledge, but you're only one person.
Yeah, well, and you've got to remember everything, right? Like that's the key, is that we don't have the capacity to take all this stuff. I did want to ask about how has it worked so far? So the idea is that, this is a protocol, and so that these can go cross-platform all over the place. How does it behave in real world though? Like, I mean, are you grabbing your skills and throwing them over into other tools and they're still working just as well? Or like, how's the reality of that gone?
For example, I use Quen Code, which is the Alibaba Quen coding tool, which is very similar to Claude Code. I use Open Code. I use Open Cowork, OpenWork, and the skills perform flawlessly. because they follow the standard. The protocol has a clearly defined standard, and as long as you write that, it is literally drag and drop. You can drag your Claude skills straight into Quen code, and it works a perfect handoff. One question that I think is worth pointing out: to centralize the knowledge for skills and plugins, at a minimum, you can have a shared resource. What the best practice is to have a private company GitHub repository that is basically a skills marketplace for your company, and you put in your company's skills in there. And here's why this is the best practice. Over time, as Katie said, things change. You will adapt stuff. You will get better at prompting. You will get better at using, new models come out and things. If you use GitHub, a private company GitHub, as your repository, then when you make changes, this is especially for Claude Code and Claude Cowork, because it's syncing with the marketplace. When you make changes to the repository, all the Claude instances in your company that have downloaded that skill through the marketplace auto update. And so you don't have to go computer by computer anymore. You can now just update the marketplace centralized. And if Anti-Gravity is using it, if Codex is using it, if Claude is using it, they all sync at the same time.
And at a very small scale, I know that that's something that we've struggled with. Just, we built a brand skill for the Trust Insights brand, and there was a couple of things I wanted to change about it. I only changed it on my machine. The changes did not, go into effect on Chris's machine. So that is why it's very important to make sure you have a way to centralize these, because we're a small company. I can just tell Chris, here's the changes I made, please go implement them. But that's not true of most companies.
Exactly. So you will probably, if you're particularly at a larger company, you'll probably want to ask, hey, do we have a company GitHub account, and can we have a section of repositories for just the folks who are using, Claude Cowork, so that you're not going to blow up, your production your software tree, and then have users authorize and set up the marketplace internally inside GitHub that will then allow you to centralize and control your plugins and your skills.
And if you want to learn more about how all that works, you can subscribe to our new prompt playbook. It's a monthly subscription. We drop 2 new prompts every single week, every Tuesday and Friday. You can go to trustinsights.ai/prompt playbook. We did our best to keep it low cost, effective, and accessible to anyone. So check it out. You can get those there, and use the 5 Ps to get started. To structure things, go to trustinsights.ai/5P-framework. And we covered a lot of those systems that Chris was talking about. So Quen, open
work and open code. Yeah.
Yes. We covered all of those on last week's live stream. So you can go to trustinsights.ai/YouTube, go to the So What playlist, and that lives there. And then our very scientific poll has John in the lead of 100%.
Landslide
He
victory.
is hands down the favorite host of this show. Congratulations, John. You get bragging rights.
I may or may not have voted for myself. I will say that.
I mean, there's no rules against it. Yeah, I mean, I didn't vote for anyone, so that's my bad. So I'm going to now stop this poll, and it is official. John is the winner.
Excellent. I should also say, too, you can do all this work or be like me and hire some people, have some people around who can do all this stuff for you and save yourself the work. There we go.
You can go to the hands down fan favorite live stream host, John Wall, and he will get you set up. So this is going to be part of your title now. Like, he is the fan favorite. So if you want to work with Trust Insights, you get to talk to John.
What a day.
All right. I think on that note, any final thoughts about turning prompts into skills? Because the next evolution after this is you start building project plans composed in part of skills.
I mean, the final thought is, if this still feels overwhelming, then start with your standard operating procedures. How are you performing and completing any given task? And start documenting that. That is a great place to start. make sure those things are getting into a central repository, and then you can start turning them into skills.
Yep. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention. I don't know if folks know this, but this is a super nerd thing. Claude Code is capable of running headless, not like a chicken. But it means you don't have to be typing in Claude Code. So you could actually create that prompt, like convert all my prompts into skills with the appropriate skills, and just run it as a command line command, which means that you could schedule it. So on a monthly basis, if you have Google Keep or SharePoint or whatever, and you have all the utilities, you could have a monthly scheduled task running on some computer somewhere in your company that automatically converts and publishes and runs the whole workflow, and move your company up to level 3 very, very quickly.
You can do the same in co-work.
Mhm.
So again, I bring that up because if you're not comfortable in code, you can also, I have, I think, 2 scheduled tasks that are set to run now on a regular basis in co-work. And then I ran a whole scheduled 4-part project a few weeks ago that I put about on LinkedIn that all just ran overnight to sort of, again, work out the sort of usage limits. So you have options for those schedules, but take advantage of them.
Yep.
I believe
Exactly.
you're sneaking into level 4. Is that correct?
I think that's level 5 or level 8, which has yet to be defined. I don't know. I'm just bitter that John won, so I have to put myself at like level 10.
All right, that's going to do it for this week, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you on the next one.
Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.